An emotional day in court as an undercover officer goes on trial for a brutal biker attack. You might remember this video of bikers beating a man in New York City back in 2013. The officer was one of 11 bikers arrested. Prosecutors say he failed to intervene as the violence erupted. The victim's wife testifying, describing her terror as her husband was dragged out of the car and beaten while she and her infant daughter were still inside the SUV.
Hello?
Alexander Leon and his wife say it started as a case of road rage and quickly escalated. They were surrounded by the bikers and accidentally hit one motorcyclist while trying to get away from them. Anna Yum is a former prosecutor. Brian Claypool is a defense attorney. This video we have seen time and time again. Anna, what does it say about the responsibility, the culpability of the undercover cop in this case?
Yes, John, this video is just bone-chilling. It gives me goosebumps. At the end of the day, this case is about an undercover officer who went so rogue that he couldn't differentiate reality from his fake life. And there are so many circumstances here where he could have diffused the situation without necessarily blowing his cover. Now, as a former prosecutor, I worked with tons of officers and many who were undercover. And I understand that there's a fine balance between gathering intelligence and not blowing your cover. But in this situation, John, the officer did not admit that he was at the scene until 3 days after the incident, and he allegedly only admitted that after he was identified on video. He did not call his handler, he did not call 911, and there's allegations that he even struck the back seat of the car while the infant daughter was in the back seat. These are facts that are not going to fare well for this officer during this trial.
This is him wearing the disguise, the mask, I guess you would call it, over his head, doesn't want to be seen publicly. Brian, he is facing a trial in front of a judge. Is that likely to get him better treatment than a jury trial would?
Well, I think so, John. But if I could respond to Anna quickly, this is a bone-chilling videotape. But when I first saw it, I thought, yeah, well, this undercover detective is going to go down. But once you parse away the emotional aspect of this, people have to understand there's what's called a public duty doctrine. Generally, unless a special relationship exists between the detective and the suspect or the victim here, then this undercover police officer does not have a duty to de-escalate the situation and does not have a duty, John, to render first aid. So unless there is evidence in this case that this undercover detective actually smashed in a window, actually physically accosted Mr. Lean and put him in peril, then this detective is not under a duty to actually render medical aid. This is unlike Freddie Gray. Remember that case where Freddie was in custody. Then there's a special relationship that exists. Then the police officers have to take care of Mr. Gray. So this is not a slam dunk case.
But Brian, he has the duty to protect and serve. He took that oath, and at the end of the day, even if he is undercover,
that's different, though.
He has a duty to protect and serve. But the allegation, Brian, is that he allegedly hit the back seat of the actual vehicle. He hit the window of the back seat. And if that's true, then that's participating in the actual assault. That's participating. That's not just being a bystander. And I think that's the biggest argument that the prosecution is going to try to make here, that it wasn't that he was just sitting around, that he potentially participated in the act.
But here's the counter to that, Anna. This undercover detective can make an argument, it's a mitigating factor, that he thought that Mr. Lean ran over an innocent person in the middle of the street, that he had a reasonable belief that a crime had been committed by Lean by running over this person in the street, and that he was actually apprehending a suspect. So that would be his defense to that.
Brian, the video.
I agree with that to a certain extent, Brian, but at the end of the day, he also didn't report that to 911. If he really thought that Mr. Leon was committing a crime, he didn't report that either. So where's the justification in doing his duty and calling his handler and debriefing them of the situation? I think there was a lot of things that he didn't do that the prosecution is focusing on in this case to prove his culpability.
The Leons say that they were just out on a date. They're driving in their Range Rover down the streets of New York City. They actually passed these bikers, offended them. The bikers swarm around their vehicle. One guy gets in front, tries to slow down the car. They bump him, knock him off his bike. He's the guy who later gets run over by the car. That doesn't exactly sound like that's an innocent victim, Brian.
Yeah, but John, here's the problem with this case against this detective, undercover off-duty detective. He can't control all the other hooligans that are involved in this attack on Lean. He can't just wave his hand and say, "Okay, everybody, stop! Don't hurt this man."
All right.
So he himself didn't create this situation.
We have to leave it there. We'll keep an eye on this case. Brian, Anna, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.